Hey everyone, and welcome to tutorial number 4 on how to team game review. So today I sort of decided that this is one of the ones I want to do because it was brought up in our suggestions tab, and it nearly won as well. It was really close to having the most votes in that, but then it didn't quite win when it came to narrowing it down. But I personally think this is one of the most important parts to any team's success. When it comes to improving as fast as a team can, because ultimately a lot of teams have a lot of skill, individual skill, but at the end of the day, it doesn't really matter how much individual skill a team has if they can't learn to come up with strategies and tactics as a team to win the game, because unfortunately this isn't solos, it's squads. So you need to make sure that you're able to improve as a team rather than just improving as an individual. And doing game VOD reviews, or game reviews, VOD reviews, whatever it wants to be, as a team is one of the most crucial ways to get everybody on the same page and therefore improve as a team as well. Cool. So we're just going to sort of talk about, so these are the just little 4 checkpoints. I'm going to go through them now, and then we'll go from there. Actually, before we start as well, this is going to be, for some of you it's great, for some of you it's not so much, a very podcasty sort of one again, guys. There's no fancy graphics or anything like this, but I promise you, this is, if you cannot take away 3 or 4 things from what I talk about from today, and this is if you're a pro level player, if you're an amateur level player, if you're a beginner level player, if you can't take a couple of, a fair few things from this chat that we're going to have today, I'll be very surprised. You're either way too good to watch this, or, maybe you just didn't care about it. I'm not too sure, but anyway, this should be awesome. Should be very informational. So I hope you guys stick around and do listen to the whole however long this video goes, I guess. Cool. So I'll run through the checkpoints very quickly, and then we'll just sort of bounce there. Now I'm gonna run off on tangents as well, like while I'm talking. But again, if you just stay with me, you'll understand where I'm coming from, and then hopefully learn from it as well. So we've got here, why is it important to review games? So that's as some of this will be like common knowledge to some, but I think it's still really important to talk about, the basics of this stuff, just in case you didn't. The do's and don'ts of reviewing. This one's really interesting. I think a lot of you guys are gonna see some things. Oh, sorry, hear me say some things that maybe you just didn't even think about previously, and it'll be a little bit of an eye-opener, I think, for a lot of people. How to input the things you talk about into your game. So now, what I mean by this is, so if you do a VOD review or a game review or whatever it may be, or you come up with some strategies and tactics, we need to make sure that we're implementing it properly into our game, so that way it's actually taking effect. And I'm going to give you a couple of examples of like some ways to do that. And then moving forward, so how do we make sure that we stay on top of this sort of stuff? Our VOD reviews and our game reviews, and how do we make sure that we're, instead of just having one awesome period of just, stepping up and, improving, how can we keep going forwards? And it's about identifying, about targeting specific areas of your game that's going to help with that. Cool. So let's get started. So we'll start with, why is it important to review games? Now, when you guys are playing PUBG, it comes down to 2 things. You guys succeed or you guys fail. And what I mean by that is that if you can keep it to a point where, I said it in a previous video, where it's on you as to what happened, whereas it's in your control, it's a lot easier to do your game reviews and VOD reviews rather than letting it be in somebody else's control and you're just waiting to be run at, or waiting to be breached, or waiting to do, you know what I mean? It's like, it's very hard to review games when it's like that. So it's very important that, when you're doing your VOD reviews and your game reviews, that you're reviewing the parts that actually matter. And again, I'm gonna get onto this later, but yeah, so that's why it's really important. And then if you guys can effectively game review, then you guys are learning, you guys are getting better at the game as a team, and then hopefully you might even learn some individual things as well. So that's why it's really important. The other thing as well is to make sure that you're using the correct tools. If some of you guys don't know, there's something called Otter Productions. It's a fantastic tool to use when doing game reviews, because it comes up with a lot of your I actually did it in one of my tutorials, the rotation tutorial. I used Otter. It's just really basic, but it gives you guys a lot of detail regarding like rotations, to what teams sort of what's the word, like patterns of play, I guess, sort of thing. So if you loot next to a team and you find yourself running into them a lot, it's really good to study, okay, what are their timings? When do they leave where they loot generally? Where do they rotate to? What do they like to hold? What do they like to play in certain circles? So it's very important that you have the correct tools when it comes to reviewing your games. If you want any more, there's a lot in the OCE SCENE Discord that you can take a look at under, I think it's important links and info, so in that tab. But yeah, so definitely go take a check out of those before you start doing your reviews. And obviously, if you're not doing any team reviews, then you're really just like winging it off of your 10-minute, little interval between games. Like, and I'm giving you like a generous 10 minutes there. So you need to make sure that you're doing it. Otherwise, that 10 minutes really isn't going to mean too much. Alright, let's move on. The do's and don'ts of reviewing. Now, this one, I am so confident that 90% of the teams out there will do reviewing really, really ineffectively. Like, they will... Yeah, and so what I mean by this is that, let's, for the sake of the argument, let's imagine that you guys got into a, I don't know, top 3 or a top 5. Let's say a top 5 situation. And let's say you had a team fight. You had all 4 alive and you lost a team fight to another team. Let's say it was a 4v3 and you lost a 4v3. I think for the benefit of the doubt, you'd say that, and I haven't given any extra scenarios into this. Let's say it's just a proper team fight. And let's say, yeah, you lost a 4v3. And I'd imagine you guys would be pretty upset, pretty angry, depending on the circumstances, of course. But yeah, bear with me that it would be pretty upsetting and pretty angry. And what I see a lot of teams doing is spending that next, 10 minutes or 5 minutes or whenever it may be, like in between the games. And then when you review it later, you always focus on that aspect of the game where you're like, oh man, we just lost that 4v3 because, Cow didn't, nade the right person, or Cow didn't flank properly, or whatever it may be. When in reality, if you can go back, I don't know, say 5 minutes, and you can find out potentially how you could have stopped your opponent or those 3 players from getting into a specific position to help them win that team fight, or if you guys could have put yourself in a more advantageous spot, guess what? Guess what we're going to do? I'm going to make this a little bit more exciting. We're going to open paint. Don't you guys love this? This is exciting. Alright, cool. So here's what I'm going to do, and you guys are going to hate this because I'm really bad at drawing. Let's draw a hill. Let's draw a hill. Alright. Boom. That's my hill. See, it's not quite perfect because hills aren't perfect in PUBG. Alright, cool. And then let's draw some players. Let's go red team. They're the ones defending. Let's say we've got boom, boom, boom. Let's say boom. Alright, they're defending their hill. Let's say Pashinki. Let's draw a Pashinki. Let's draw an arrow. To Poch. So say Pachinki's that way. Alright, so a team has to come out of Pachinki and they see, let's say this is Pachinki Hill. This is how you're holding it. You're holding a 3-1 split, okay? Because you think your mate's not going to get breached or whatever, because you weren't paying attention to who was in Poch. And let's say, alright, the Poch guy had to leave and you guys didn't realize that they were still in there, and they drive and take this spot over here. I'm so sorry that I used another one. Let's say they drove around over here. Alright, cool. Your third player actually just meets up, and you guys are more center than them, and it's awesome. Like, you're like loving life, and you're like, yeah, this is way better. Like, we've got the best spot in the zone, and then later you have a 4v3, and then for some reason I hard shifted back to these guys, and then they won the fight. So what you then need to do is say, okay, how do I avoid that situation where they're allowed to cross Pashinki fields for free and get into that position? Don't talk about the fight that just happened, because at the end of the day, if you guys held Pashinki Hill properly, or whatever it is you're holding, I'm just using examples here. If you held, let's say maybe instead of that, you did recognize, because earlier in the game, you heard, some gunshots, or you recognized that the Pashinki team was, getting kills, and you could hear the gunshots in there, and you're like, oh, well, they've got to come out eventually. Maybe next time, instead of holding it like this, you guys would recognize that as one of the threats for you, because you're like, well, maybe Pashinki Hill isn't so easy to hold when you're getting pushed from that side, and you say, all right, well, this is what I'm going to do this time. We're gonna go 1, 2, 3, 4, and then because let's say that in the fields it's harder for them to get to us because there's all those shacks and stuff, and say if they drive to us it's like a death trap. I don't know, there's some things that you can think about, but there, and then let's say we avoid them and they're like, well, they're showing a bit of a presence here, there's 4 people, let's maybe not go there. So this is one of the things that people get caught into, is they focus so much on what cost them the game when they died, rather than what cost them the game halfway in the middle, or 5 minutes before it actually happened. So if you genuinely, we're just gonna get out of this, if you genuinely think that it came down to the fight, then that it does happen sometimes, and it could be the fight's problem. You could have played perfect PUBG up until that point. But if you are honest with yourself, how often is that normally the case? So when you're doing your team and VOD reviews, look for the little intricate details that led up to your demise, led up to you guys dying there, and see if you can pick out anything that else could have been the problem. It could have been an earlier rotate. It could have been the positioning of one of your players. It could have been so many things. And I see a lot of teams just focus on, oh, God, we just lost a fight. And it's like, how could you have avoided the fight? Or how could you put yourself in a more advantageous position? How could you have kept them out and gate kept them? So there's all these things that could have happened. We need to find out what is the most beneficial way for us to play with this circle or whatever it may be. And that's going to help you guys a lot. That's one of the big ones. So do not focus on what, like, when you die. Don't focus on that. Look for something else. Look for something that's really going to help you. All right. The other thing, when you're reviewing, it is very easy to point fingers, and it's very easy to play the blame game. You guys need to get that out of your head. I don't care if somebody made the biggest mistake of their life. All you need to do is say it once and then move on. If you are, using names of your team members, and you're speaking for more than 10 seconds, you are wasting time. You are literally, that is complete waste of time. You need to say it once, maybe twice, and then you're done. If you continue on about it and bring it up later or whatnot, you are literally wasting your time of VOD reviewing. If you set about an hour 2 times a week or whatnot, time matters to do VOD review. Like, you need to make sure that you're not wasting it, or especially if you're doing it in between games. If you're spending the 10 minutes in between games picking on one of your team members who probably knows what they did wrong, then yeah, like, I can't say too much. So, because if you think of it this way, if you were getting pointed fingers at and getting the blame game, there's a very, very, very good chance that you already know what you've done, but you like to get on the defensive, and then you just go, oh, well, you know what, and then you start going at each other, and then there's problems. So anyway, you got to avoid that, guys. There's no reason in VOD review time or game review time for you guys to be getting cranky at each other and pointing fingers. Talk more productive. It is far more productive to talk about something else in the game that was team related than it was individual. They know what they did wrong. Okay, so just think about that, all right? Cool bananas. All right, the do's of reviewing. Make sure that you include everybody when you game review. Everybody has something to learn. This is a big one. A lot of people just see one game and they go, oh, well, I wasn't really doing much the entire game. Well, why weren't you doing much? And so you don't just then spend time being like, well, how come you were not impactful? Sorry. You don't just go, oh, well, you weren't able to be impactful. That's okay. You say, well, let's get you more impactful next time. At what point, if you go through the games, but what point as IGL or whatever you may be, or whoever's talking, at what point could I have gotten, Cal more involved in this game to make sure that he had a lot more of an impact? If his job was to watch the back, then arguably he was impactful, and if that helped you to succeed. So you've just got to find out what was impactful and what wasn't. So make sure you include everybody. Some people just focus on the 2 people that made the plays, or focus on the people that made the mistakes. Don't forget about everybody else. And if everybody in the team VOD review or game review can find something individually that they did wrong, but they can translate it back in towards the game, the team review, then you're looking pretty awesome, actually. So that's one of the big things. All right, cool. Let's move on for now. How to input the things you talk about into your game. So this is pretty much about us. Okay, so we've identified one of the big problems in our game, and that's maybe that, okay, during the game of VOD reviews, we found out that in 3 out of 5 of our games last night, we got gate kept. Okay, and then we're like, well, why did we get gate kept? And then we need to find out the reasons to why we're getting gate kept out of these zones. And it's because we were leaving our loot spot too late. You know, which is a big problem. Let's say you loot, I don't know, Severny, and you're always going to be on the edge if you have any of those western or eastern circles. So it's like, all right, so how do I avoid getting gate kept? Let's see what the timings of everybody else are. Oh, wow, Rozok is only getting in front of us by 30 seconds. Oh, wow, North Georgia is only getting in front of us by about a minute. So what if we just left a little bit earlier, sacrifice some of our loot? Let's give that a go. So none of these things that you do in team VOD reviews or team game reviews are necessarily going to work, but it's all about trying them. So your best place to try them is obviously scrims. Okay, so making sure that in scrims you're leaving it. Now, you can argue with me all that you want that it's not going to be the same and whatever it is, but you're going to get a feeling and you're going to start learning what it's like to leave early. What sort of loot are we looking at? Do I have enough to go? Do I not have enough to go? Do I need to loot more efficiently? Do I need to get a car faster? Like you're learning at least from this experience. So making sure that you're doing those things and then obviously taking it in scrims is really, really important. So that's a really good way to input it into your games. The other things as well, if it's like potentially a confidence thing where it comes to like fighting, or if it comes to rotations, then maybe you need to exaggerate it a little bit as well. So I know that when my team was getting used to the kill, like we're already pretty good at the kill meta before it even became the kill meta, but we wanted to be even more proficient at it. And so what we did in scrims was we'd actually look for fights. So it didn't matter if, like, you know, when we were doing scrims, it really didn't matter that necessarily that we were taking some bad fights, because that was our focus. That was what we came to terms with, was one of our biggest things that we needed to work on. So we'd do it as often as we could to make sure that we were, you know, learning how to fight as a team, because for us it was communication. And if you're in a bad spot and you're trying to fight in a bad spot, then your communication needs to be pretty awesome to win it or to get out of it or whatever it may be. So that was our goal as a team. And so that's something that you guys need to look into, is how can I exaggerate what I'm trying to learn? And that's going to help you guys improve a lot faster. So don't just be like, oh, well, we need to work on our west rotates. You know, let's only do it when there's west zones. Maybe if there's a center zone, just take that west road and then discover some fast paths. If you're trying to learn, how do I avoid the bumps? How do I avoid the compounds? Stuff like that. Just do it. And that's one of the cool things. If it's a rotate one, you can do it in matchmaking as well. So if you're learning the paths of, you know, the new rotations that you're trying to take, because you've studied the teams. So there's all these things that you guys can do. So you just got to exaggerate it to a point where it's like, it's really drilling it into your brain. Because if it's going to take you 2 months to get used to this thing that you're talking about, where it could have happened in a week, I think I know which one I'd choose. So just be aware of that. Exaggerate it in scrims. Exaggerate it in matchmaking if you can. Maybe if you want to experiment with it in comp as well, it's completely up to you, but you need to make sure you build confidence in it, and the best way to do it is to do it again and again and again. And then if you find out that it isn't the right, you know, the right way to do it, there's no skin lost, right? It's just scrims at the end of the day. Cool, awesome. So that's how you're going to input it into your games. Now moving forward, if you guys are having the success that you're having, you cannot just like leave VOD review and game reviews to the side. Just about, well, that's enough. We've gotten to the point where I'm happy and stuff. You can always improve in this game, always. So you need to make sure that you're still doing your game reviews and your VOD reviews, and you need to make sure, this is one of the big ones, is that if you guys are still, doing an awesome job of doing those game reviews, that you don't bounce back towards the habit of pointing fingers and stuff. This is one of the big ones. You have to be able to team game review without the pointing of fingers in your team. This is going to create so much more, what's the word? Like, as cringy as it is, I'm going to say morale in your team. And then you have no idea how much more important that morale is going to be. So you need to make sure that you're focusing on the team and the team only. And when it comes to VOD reviews, if you can avoid saying, I was doing this as like a positive thing, maybe if everybody could compliment their teammate and stop complimenting themselves. Because, like, you can compliment yourselves, like, whenever you want. You do it after the games, whatever. But when you're there with the team, try compliment the rest of your teammates in something that they did really well. Because that's a much bigger confidence boost rather than me just going, hey, Cal, you're awesome. Like, I know that. I know I'm awesome. But if you know what I mean, try compliment your teammates. Say something that they did positive as well, and then you can tee it in with a negative thing as well. But like always reinforce that there's a positive thing there that they did in the games or something they've been doing really good over the course of a tournament or whatever it may be. That's really important, like really important, because at the end of the day, this is a team game, and that's one of the best ways to ensure that your team is going to have success for a long time. So yeah, there was something else I was going to say, and it was really important, and I'm struggling to think about it. But that's a bit of a bum. I'll come back to it one day, I'll come back to it one day. But anyway, just to sort of like wrap it all up, if you guys, are finding that none of these sort of, the game reviews, maybe you guys are not focusing on the right things. So you've really got to knuckle down and make sure that you're ready to jump onto what you think at first, maybe the answer to all your problems, and then move from there. Because there could be multiple problems. But I think it's best if you just sort of work at them one at a time. Focus on one and iron them out. And obviously the one that you start with is the one that is the biggest concern to you. Okay, so if it's fighting, and then maybe it's rotations. Then you focus on rotations once you feel like you've cleaned that up a little bit. So you just take it step by step by step and make sure everybody's on the same page. You don't want to create all these expectations. You want your team to be thinking about 5 different things at once while they're playing. Focus on, what one aspect of your game that needs improvement is, and hammer it down, hammer it down, hammer it down. Cool, so I think that's about it. If you guys have any questions, as always, feel free to DM me, Twitter, Discord, in the comments, whatever it may be. If you guys do this, this will improve you all, like you and your team, like tenfold. This is like arguably one of the most important parts of the game. And I think probably 50% of teams don't even game review. And I think 90% of the teams that do game reviews don't even do it properly. So, good luck. I hope you guys learn from it, and I hope you didn't get too bored listening to my voice. I think for next week, what we're going to do is we're going to do a little bit of a suggestions poll again. Just because I've sort of run out of the things that I wanted to do today, for the past 3 tutorials. So I'll leave it up to you guys, I think. If you do have any suggestions as well, feel free to message me those. But yeah, I hope you guys enjoyed, and I really hope you learned some stuff, and if you didn't, you must be a god tier player. And I'll see you guys in the next video. Catch you later.